What's good, folks? Welcome to another episode of the Cover One Film Room, the show that gives you the hows and the whys behind both the good and the bad of the Buffalo Bills. I am one of your two hosts, Anthony Prohaska, joined as always by Mr. Erik Turner, returning from vacation. Erik Turner, a special version. That's why we had no show last week. But Erik, you are back. We are back. The Bills have a new signing. It's a receiver that everyone is just over the moon about. They finally have their answers and desires, not polarizing at all. Everybody's just super on board and happy with the signing. And we're going to break him down and his game and what he means and what the wide receiver group and room looks like now. So we got a lot to dive into on this episode. But welcome back from vacay. Nice to see you.
Thanks. I'm happy to be back. I'm happy that we have some film in the offseason to study, adding Valdes-Scantling to the roster. As you said, we're going to talk about the pecking order, the roles that he may play among the other wide receivers, among the, monster wide receiver room now. Talk about an overnight change. Like everyone is a big wide receiver now in the wide receiver room.
Yeah, like the Monstars from like Space Jam.
Yeah,
like that's what
exactly.
this receiver room is now.
So we're going to talk about some of that stuff. But yeah, it's good to be back. But again, it's good to have some film to break down in the offseason. This is for content creators like ourselves. This is that time of year that, vacation is nice. Don't get me wrong. But it's also a time that it's very difficult to come up with content for you guys to consume. And as a film-based show, an X's and O's type show, when we have the ability to break down stuff, guys from the draft and signings like we're gonna have tonight. It's always nice to have some content, some easy content, really, to do some scouting, do some evaluation, break some some film down for you guys on another Wednesday night, albeit a special episode a little earlier than usual.
Yeah, a little earlier, making some adjustments to I feel like the film room has just been constant adjustments over the last 2 months. We've had life has been coming at us fast from a lot of different directions. But yeah, it's nice to have. Again, we had something else planned, and then this happened. We're like, cool, we'll do like the MVS signing. And I guess when you see that, I had just kind of my only take on it was just like, man, the Bills are going to run the football. And just made that one little tweet because I see this signing. Yeah, right. I see this signing as just rounding out the wide receiver room. This is another body towards, like we continue to say on the show, building that basketball lineup at wide receiver. So I didn't take it as oh my God, I'm in love with it. And I didn't take it oh my God, this team is a joke. What the hell are they thinking? Like so many people did. Same thing with the Chase Claypool signing. I was like, whatever, it's a depth guy.
Right.
When you saw this news and heard about this move, what were your thoughts? What was your reaction to this signing? Were you all about it? Were you in the middle? Were you grabbing your torch and pitchfork and ready to march on one Bills drive? Where was your head
at? Even when they announced that he was visiting, it was ho-hum for me. Whether they signed him or not, it wasn't going to really get too much of a reaction out of me. I understood and could rationalize why they would want to bring in a guy like that, not just with his size, but his speed and the role he's played going all the way back to college. And the Bills were interested in him coming out of college, albeit it was a different wide receiver coach that went and worked him out privately, Terry Rubisky at the time, but they were interested in Valdes-Scantling years ago. And so I could rationalize and still can rationalize why they would be interested in this guy, not just because of his size, but his ability to stretch the field. The Bills, they need that. They need that, especially if we're talking playing against man coverage, right? And, guys that can just separate with their flat out speed. And albeit he does it in only certain areas, in the intermediate and the deep areas, as we'll talk about. But again, even once they sign him, I'm like, okay, I get it. Not a big deal. Get in there and compete, and we'll see how how he fares. And what's interesting to me is that, like we kind of alluded to it, it's the size of the wide receivers, the amount of, going into the draft, like the Bills got to get their future X. They got to get some size, they got to get some speed, and we're thinking of all these different roles and physical measurables. And then now they have an abundance of type wide receivers, bigger type, physical type wide receivers, but they weren't quite adding those type of, size receivers that had also speed and athleticism. So I think it's going to be interesting when you look at the depth chart and you see the size that they have now in the wide receiver room. It's almost like they flipped it on its head. It's like, okay, they have a ton of X's, right? And guys that can, probably play both, but now it's almost like, hey, they kind of neglected Z. So it'll be interesting to see how that falls, right? It just how it's rounded out so far from free agency through the draft and now the post draft?
Yeah, it's been actually real quick. I want to pull up. We got a super chat from
Thanks, Clark.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And Clark says, thanks for all the phenomenal content. Go Bills from London. We're global here in the film.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you
very much, Clark. That's awesome. Yeah, I said it last night on Disguised Coverage. It's funny how, like, what we talked about wanting the wide receiver room to have and the tweaks that we wanted them to make. And then also talking about that within, like, hey, struggles versus man coverage, needing separators and speed. And the Bills were like, we had trouble versus man coverage. So what we're going to do is just everybody's going to be huge. And it's like, okay, well, what about adding more separators? They were like, nope. Everybody's just going to be huge. It's like, what about speed? And they're like, maybe.
Yeah.
It's funny to see where, and then you folks know as we get into the X's and O's as this offseason goes along, what that will potentially lead to schematically in terms of what this offense could potentially look like going forward and what Joe Brady might be potentially thinking. But yeah, it really is just, especially with what we've talked about, we were like, okay, it'd be nice if we could add like this type of skill set. And it was like Brandon Beane was like, oh yeah, and just turned it up to 100 and they just added all size and all these frames. And now we're sitting there thinking, okay, there is some versatility and some mixing and matching ability, but it really is going to be interesting to kind of see how the pecking order turns out for these guys, but also who occupies what role and in what space. How much of it is opponent driven? How much of it is static core principles that are built into the offense? Which guys get activated literally and figuratively based on like the week or opponent or play style that they're trying to emulate at that time. And I think like the patterns and the questions for this offense that we're trying to diagnose and see going forward, it's just really interesting because it's such a divergence from what they previously were at receiver. The John Browns and the Stephon Diggses and the Cole Beasleys and the GOAT, Andy Isabella. And now it's just like, no, we just got a whole bunch of redwood trees that we're going for. And yeah, you bring it up right here now with the graphic of just seeing kind of what we have lined up here at the X and the Z and the dub. And just, it's a very interesting way they just attack this group. Like I'm still seeing it placed in front of me right here, just as another like reminder instead of it just being in my brain.
And Magic Catfish adds, Khalil Shakir, you are the Bills starting Z. See, I would have to say Curtis Samuel is, and Shakir is, of course, a slot primarily if we're running 3 wide receiver sets. But right now, I mean, of course, Beane really talked up Coleman being the X and probably playing early. So I slotted him in there as the X. You got Curtis Samuel as a Z and the Shakir as a slot. And of course, second, third, and fourth depth players there. You could move those guys around. But if you just look at the Mac Hollins, Valdes-Scantling, Claypool, Justin Shorter, Cephas, and Shavers, like those are big guys.
Monsters, man. Yeah, redwoods.
Yeah, those are really big guys. And yes, there's some crossover where maybe you don't want Justin Shorter or Claypool, as a X on the line of scrimmage getting pressed. So maybe you put him as a Z and move him around a little bit. So there is some versatility there. But I did this real quick last night, and I just want to get an idea, a visual of this wide receiver room right now. And it's so big, bro. Like they're monsters, as you said. And so I know Shakir, he can play some Z. I do even like some of what, Hamler and Isabella.
Yes.
If they're not on the line of scrimmage, if they're moved around with their quickness and speed and just the thought of them, in those type of roles, not just in the slot. Just because Hamler, like you saw him do it a bunch at Penn State, and you actually saw it when he was healthy with the Broncos as well. I know his size screams slot, but he's got such speed, and I'm talking vertical speed, that I think you can use him in some sets at the Z position.
Yeah, he's one that I keep coming back to in terms of looking at what I think, like, as we always start to get closer to training camp, it's like, okay, you start to think of the roster and it's like, how does it fill out? And it's like, okay, are they going to keep, is it going to be 5 receivers? Is it going to be 6? And I think the way you have it layered out here, I don't want to say it's set, but I think the top 5 is pretty solid with it's Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, Mac Hollins, and then MVS. And then that 6th receiver, is it Isabella? Is it Hamler? Is it Claypool? Is it Shorter? Are they looking for more size? How much of a special teams role comes into it? If Mac Hollins is going to be such a special teams guy, maybe they look for a different receiver aspect that even though they're 6th on the depth chart, maybe they see more receiver snaps because Hollins is more special teams and a specific usage kind of guy. And I just think, to your point, like Hamler offers them something that they don't necessarily have a ton of, which is that speed aspect
Yeah.
and what he can do. And we talked about it a bunch, like the idea of adding separators and speed to this offense. And again, we talked about it with Keon Coleman breakdown in the episode a couple weeks ago. Like the guys Allen has traditionally won with are guys who win declaratively. Cole Beasley, Stephon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid last year, guys who get open early, often, and make it easy to be like, hey, bro, I'm wide open. Let me wave my hands, throw it, hit me. I got you. And then we talked about having that element added more in, and they didn't really go that way. And they
Yeah.
didn't really go a ton in that speedway. So I looked to see,
Right.
like, yeah, is that sixth receiver? Hamler offers something they don't have. And I guess Isabella does too
Yeah.
as well. But especially if you're looking at that top five as the top five, like Coleman, Samuel, Shakir, Hollins, and MVS, whatever order you want to put them in, that sixth guy, I feel like you really could lean into a specific or specialized role or skill set that Hamler or Isabella could potentially offer, because they offer something that isn't readily prevalent and available holistically across the, top five, quote unquote.
Right. And so the way you broke it down is perfect, man. And they do have, quite the battle coming up in camp. And so trying to establish the roles that they're going to play, and let's keep it in perspective. And when we're talking about MVS, we spoke about how he's a field stretcher. He's got that, straight line speed. He's got good size, pretty good body control, as you'll see in some of these clips. But I want to just visually show you like where he's attacked the field. So we're going to use True Media's numbers here. And if you can see under air yards right here, you're going to see the air yards behind the line of scrimmage, air yards 0 to 10, air yards 11 to 20, and then 21 to 30. And if you look and you scroll over a few columns, if you look at the team target percentage or even the player target percentage, you can see in the air yards column, that's 11 to 20. That row is 20.8% as target percentage. So in the intermediate area, in 11 yards to 20 yards, air yards, he was targeted 20.8%. Now, 21 to 30 yards down the field, he was targeted 42.1%. And this is important as you scroll over a little more. And this is over the last 2 years. So these numbers are 2022 and 2023. And you look at some of the targets and the receptions in those areas. And in, where he was really struggling was in that short area. If you look at 0 to 10 yards, in the target column and the reception column, you can see like everyone talks about reception rates and catch rates. Well, that's where you're going to see some of that discrepancy there, and why he's only, a 54% catch rate or reception rate type guy. You can see he struggles in that 0 to 10 yard range. But even look at 15 to 40 yards, 15 receptions on 40 targets on passes, 21 yards or more. I mean, that's going to hurt your catch rate. And that's something that always comes back to the conversation with Gabe Davis and was it even catchable, And so those are things you have to think about when you're looking at those, that type of statistic. But what I really want to highlight, because it is one of his issues, and we're going to show you why it's an issue and why his drops, kind of creep up. But if you look at the drops, he has 8 drops over the last 2 years. Look where most of them are. It's kind of just like Gabe, where it was in the short areas.
That Xavier Worthy piece too, right? Like these guys who have drops, and it comes into like the underneath, and not even when you're getting downfield or in the intermediate. Yeah, it's funny how that kind of shakes out for him. And also has some similar like catch style at some points, like Gabe Davis, with how 100%. He claps at the ball.
Frames it. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, he's a really interesting breakdown from a metric perspective. I also like, one of the columns showed like his EPA per target and like being at a negative 0.12 EPA per target.
In the short, right?
From 0 to 10, negative 0.12 is a crazy low amount of, there you go, right in the center of the page there, negative 0.12 from.
But then look at the other other rows.
Exactly, like 0.4 when he's getting the ball behind the line of scrimmage, but the sample size is small because it's only 4 catches on 4 targets. And then look what he's doing: 11 to 20 and 21 to 30, like a 0.34 EPA per target and a 0.38. Those are healthy numbers, especially if you're looking at him being your wide receiver 4 or wide receiver 5 or 3 in a pinch if something really goes sideways.
Anthony, go a few columns over. You look yards per route run. It's another one of those cornerstone stats for wide receivers. 0.47 from 0 to 10 yards, but then 2.13, which is, much more respectable. And then 5.56 on those plays, 20 yards or more. So you guys can tell intermediate and deep areas. And I think when you talk about that in the grand scheme of the Bills offense, when in the grand scheme of Josh Allen, that's really, that intermediate area is a spot that he's always loved, those deep digs, some of those crossers, the deep overs, some of those posts. And then, of course, he struggled a little bit on some of those posts down the field last
Yeah.
year. But when you think about this offense, like having guys like MVS who not only are, can stretch a field, run speed over routes like that, but that can beat man coverage. And
Mm.
it's something that we talked about this entire offseason, how the Bills have needed to add that type of wide receiver, a guy that can run those deep overs and separate with their speed, right, Ant?
Yeah, which is why they got Keon Coleman. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, we've talked about it a bunch. We broke it down with Kurt. Like the Curtis Samuel move was very much a signing that kind of lent itself to that idea of being like, okay, these guys who can run those deep overs, who can separate, who can create separation with their speed and with that physical presence and with that element. And MVS is a move towards that. I think he has a 40 time that I think he plays to that 40 time on tape. Like he runs a 4.37. And when he runs, like you see him, he kind of only really has one speed, maybe like two
Yes.
speeds. He's not a big gear changer guy or deception guy, but he can move. And for his size and what he offers overall, pairing that with his size and frame and blocking and roll, it is an element present within his game that I think we thought would come more in the receiver that they took in the draft, like whoever they prioritized, but they didn't go that way. But instead, they're still addressing it in some form or fashion, bringing in MVS. And also then with what he's able to do versus man, which you talked about on Twitter
Yeah.
and showed, and then we'll talk about here now. Also another move in that direction that we thought this offense needed. Again, we thought it would come more towards the top of the depth chart instead of the bottom and in more quantity, but nonetheless, it is present with MVS.
Yeah, just look at these EPA per target splits over the last 2 years for MVS. Against zone, it was 0.09, but against man, he had a 0.38 EPA per target, which was 30th overall among all wide receivers. His yards per reception versus man was 18.4. That was 8th overall. And his explosives per target was 28.6%. That was 7th. So again, the Bills need multiple options to beat man coverage. Sometimes you're going to do that with size and physicality. Sometimes you're going to do that with speed. Sometimes you're going to do that with route running. And I think the Bills, as you said, if you're adding the tight end group to this, reception mix, they have a healthy mix of wide receivers or receivers and tight ends that can do some different things. And then once you add in the running backs, then it's like, okay, I get where you're going with this. You're not just trying to, round out the wide receiver room, but Beane actually did a decent job overall, including the signing the MVS, and maybe he doesn't make a difference. Maybe he doesn't even make the team. But I think this is a good attempt, late in this offseason already. And, to bring in a guy that can stretch the field, a guy that can win versus man coverage, a guy that, as we'll show with the film, is good in the scramble drill, and stuff like that. It's okay. It's an okay signing. We're gonna show a bunch of things, good and bad, in this breakdown, which is exciting. But I do think that overall, as you said, from the top, Beane has done a decent job of rounding out not just a wide receiver room, but all of the targets for Josh Allen, especially if you're talking size, speed, man versus zone, areas of the field that Josh likes to attack. Like he's done a healthy job of doing all of that.
With specific regard to the speed question, an element that again we've talked about on the show and a lot of fans have talked about it. It's why a lot of fans wanted Brian Thomas, or some wanted Xavier Worthy, somebody who could fly and really go. We talked about a little bit of the skill sets that are present for you. Do you think now the Bills have enough speed in this wide receiver room? Do you think it's because I guess for me, like I keep thinking the speed is okay. I also keep factoring Dalton Kincaid into it because I'm thinking his speed versus linebackers and safeties, like he can win with that. But I keep coming back, like if I force myself to forget about Kincaid as a pass catcher and forget about James Cook as a pass catcher and what they can do with athleticism and speed, if I'm just focusing on the wide receiver room, I think it's okay. I'm not completely comfortable with the speed that they have. I think it's fine. Like, not like the dog meme where he's sipping the coffee and everything's on fire type of fine. Like I'm truly like whelmed. I'm like, it's fine, but I wish they had more of a speed element present either at the top of the depth chart or holistically across at least, 4 or 5 receivers.
I love how you put that because it does, I think it's okay. It's fine. I'm there with you. But what it really comes down to is Joe Brady and Josh Allen.
Mm.
How are they going to use the speed they have? How are they going to create those matchups that give their speed guys or guys that can show the element of speed
Mm.
and win? And so how they, manipulate the formations where those guys align, I think that is really going to be the deciding factor, as is, often the case. But like I said, I like the size and physicality that they had. And if you're talking about these big physical wide receivers, well, and you're including Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox.
Mhm.
What's cool about what they're doing with the size factor is that a lot of the size guys they have are pretty athletic guys, and guys
True.
like Don Kincaid are going to probably spend more time in the slot and out wide than in line. So when you're moving a guy like him outside, or you're moving James Cook outside or into the slot, you're allowing your quarterback to see the field better because of the
Mm.
what we call those man coverage indicators. So if you have a tight end out wide or running back out wide and a linebacker's on them, well, guess what? It's probably man coverage. That makes things easier for Josh. But if a guy's out wide, maybe Keon Coleman is now in that big slot role,
Mm.
and you're able to exploit some things inside versus a DB over the middle of the field with his size. So
Yeah.
it's all about how Joe Brady and this staff use those guys that have speed, but also the guys that have the size.
I love the way you put that, and not just because it echoes something that I've been saying on Twitter and said something last night. Like, I really think the way this grouping has been built at wide receiver, you don't necessarily have that guy that can go get you a bucket, but you have a lot of different buttons that can be pushed and levers that can be pulled for Joe Brady. Like, I think the way this room has been built at wide receiver and how that extends into what we're going to see from the offense, I think a lot of it's being put onto the shoulders of Joe Brady to be able to use these guys schematically and take advantage of their skill sets. Because to your point, I think despite not having what everybody traditionally may have wanted for the wide receiver room at this point in the year, when you look at it paired with the tight ends and with the running backs and the presence of the run game, but just focusing on it from a pass perspective, they really have a lot of multiplicity in terms of what they can do from an alignment perspective, from a personnel perspective, who they put where and how they get to that spot, and then the opportunity to then create mismatches off of that. And again, that's all fine and dandy, but you really need an offensive coordinator to pull that blood or draw that blood from the stone. And it's going to be real interesting to see like how well Brady does that, because despite not having a true traditional difference maker, although I think, Kincaid could potentially be that,
Yeah.
despite not having that on paper right now, there is a lot of potential for this offense to create mismatches against defenses, despite not having that name guy right off the bat that we traditionally have seen the past several years with Stephon Diggs and then John Brown and Cole Beasley before that.
Right. A guy that, if you have a gotta have a moment, like,
Mhm.
okay, the ball's going to Stephon Diggs in that moment. So I do think, yeah, Josh will be forced to more times than not distribute the ball, and he does have a good litany of weapons, as we said. And so when we're talking about this specific weapon, what were some things after going back and watching MVS's film, some things that really stood out to you, or like the cornerstone traits of his game?
I thought the speed was nice first and foremost. Just and how he uses it immediately off the line. Like there isn't any, kind of wasted, like, oh, let me get up to full speed. No, like he's trying to get up to full speed within like his second and third step and he's going. I like some of the veteran savvy that he operates with. You'll see him recognize coverages and use, especially if he's in man, like he'll use other defenders to create interference for the man that's covering him to be able to give himself some more separation. I like that. I like how QB friendly he is in the scramble drill, which makes sense. You playing with Patrick Mahomes and you
Right.
played with Aaron Rodgers, two big time off script scramble drill type of QBs. I like his ability to get QB friendly, find space, make himself available, getting into the field of vision of his quarterback. And then also just, again, the ability to recognize coverages post snap, to be able to see something and kind of immediately sit down and settle in his zone and get his eyes to the QB or get his numbers shown to the quarterback to be like, hey, look right here. Like, look what just happened. This space is vacated and voided on 3rd and 4. I'm sitting at 5. This is wide open. Hit me. And Mahomes would or Aaron Rodgers would and things like that. So I think the speed with the ability to find space and leverage that and just the veteran presence that he has. And then I think the size and the frame plays nice too, the ability to function in some of those blocking roles and be able to come down into a reduced alignment and add some of that versatility. So I don't think overall, I don't think it's the sexiest or the most, I'm watching it going like, oh man, I cannot wait to see this guy get into the offense. But I think it rounds things out, and he does have several useful pieces to his skill set that can be applicable to this offense. What about for you? What kind of hallmark or calling cards do you think he has?
I mean, he's obviously played in some big games over the last few years.
Mhm.
Now, the consistency isn't always there if you're talking the full scope of the season, but it just weird how in big games, and I'm talking the biggest of big games, right? He makes these plays, especially big plays on the field in those big moments. So
I kept saying it all last year, and I was just like, he's gonna have like the clincher for the Super Bowl, the clincher for some game, and I think he had it against the Ravens. I think he like iced the game against Baltimore in the AFC Championship with some like
right.
third down catch. Like he just seems like he's at one catch for 17 yards, but that one catch is the one that mattered the most.
Clifford asks, MVS type in May. I'm all in. No guarantees, but a legit NFL guy. Does he play special teams? Fan base went nuts for Duke Johnson. This seems to be a similar type player. From what I recall during research, I don't think he plays any special teams. I think Anthony nailed it on the head. I think Mac Hollins is going to be heavily involved in that, and I think that's why he's pretty much a lock. On top of his size, his veteran leadership, and his ability in that intermediate area as well, and some clutch moments. But I don't think he plays much special teams.
No, I'm even going through back just to make sure I wasn't crazy with my notes, and I'm all the way back through 2021. And he had one kick return rep in 2021. No special teams in
Was it a
2022.
squib? End of the game,
right.
squib.
That's exactly what I'm
Sidekick.
thinking. Exactly right. So like probably a hands team rep in 2021.
Yeah.
Same thing for 2020. No special teams reps in 2022 or 2023. He had some kick coverage and punt coverage reps early in his career, like 2018 and 2019. But really since 2020, he's been a non-factor on special teams.
Yeah. And so not much special teams, but his big plays in those big moments, obviously he's got some rings. I thought there was some variance to it, but his body control is really, really, really good down the field, especially on like slot fades and some of those go routes and, throws down the seam or he's got to adjust to it. You'll see some of those tonight here in the film room. But obviously, the big one that stands out are the drops. And as I said, 8 drops over the last 2 years. A lot of those are just focus or concentration issues. Some of it's the framing. Sometimes he does some of like this framing, and sometimes it's almost like he's taking a snap too. It's like, what are you doing?
It's like he's doing like a Kamehameha from Dragon Ball Z. And I'm like, you can't catch a ball like that.
Right. And then something else that you'll see is sometimes when he's not that good versus zone. When he's in between 2 or 3 defenders, he tends to take his eyes off the ball and trying to look out ahead to see where the hit's coming from or where that guy is driving from. And so he doesn't look the ball in and he'll drop it, as you'll see some of those. But I think those are the big ones. I do think he's a straight line guy, change of direction, yak stuff. If you're throwing it at 5 yard stop to him, I'm not expecting many more yards after the catch just because it takes so long for him to transition.
You got to get it to him on like a drag and hope you hit him perfectly in stride. He can just keep going because he's not shaking anybody after if he's from a standing position.
And good luck in that with Josh. But those are some of the things that I really liked. And again, tonight in the film room, as I bring up the film right now, I want everyone to keep in mind the perspective of, hey, the Bills need guys that can win with speed, win with their vertical leverage, and in those plays that when Gabe became a heavily a big focus in the Bills offense in those big moments, he was making those plays along the boundary. He was making those plays outside of script for Josh. And if everything goes well, the value you're getting with MVS and some of the things that he does differently than Gabe, hopefully you're getting some of those cornerstone traits that help the Bills early on and help Josh develop into the QB that he is.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. And if you're getting that at a 1 year up to like $4 million contract that's very incentive laden, that's a win. Like you get that value without having to commit that much of a financial investment to it. So you still have some of that skill set present, which allows you to still push some of those familiar buttons and pull some of those familiar levers, but you get maybe more of a true speed or vertical element that, granted, Gabe could work in that way, but wasn't necessarily best suited for him given, kind of how he moved versus how MVS can really fly.
Right. So let's dive into some of this film, man. So you see MVS in the slot in this trips formation to the bottom of the screen. But I want to rewind it to the beginning because this is the type of stuff we were talking about a few minutes ago. You have a running back out wide to the top, and you have Patrick Queen, the linebacker, lining up on him. It's obvious, man, type, coverage here. And so now that Mahomes has that identified, you see him set the protection. And I want you to watch what MVS does to the bottom of the screen. This is a play that you alluded to. You see that guy get his hands right on MVS. And of course, that size allows him to kind of work through that. But then you're going to see the middle of the field kind of open up, and he is able to get deep to the post. And honestly, this is a touchdown. If it's thrown completely up the field, but it's kind of thrown behind him just a little bit, and you see him have to adjust to that. But he does a great job of adjusting and making that catch down the field.
Yeah, that's a really nice adjustment. This is kind of like reminiscent of some of Allen's deep throws last year, where guys would have to make an adjustment or like kind of come back to it. But this is a nice play. Like all things considered, if he drops this pass, everybody's raking him over the coals. It's another drop for MVS. But this isn't really a well thrown ball, especially with how MVS wins on this route. But it shows one of those hallmark pieces or calling cards that you talked about with the body control. So that's a nice plus piece for him that he showcases on this one. And then again, for Bills fans and what we've been clamoring and talking about, that ability to separate on a post or on that over, like you see him lean, and once he puts his foot in the ground, like there is that separation. And if the ball is thrown more across the field towards the sideline, or even just more angularly, period, he can get under this and house it. But because it's thrown so upfield, he shows, that's good ball tracking, that's good adjustment, that's good body control. But regardless of that, it's that initial separation that he causes because of his speed, because of his pacing. And that's an element that we wanted in this Bills offense. That's an element this Bills offense has needed. And then you add in a moment too. Yeah, like you circled there, it's third down. I think this was like third down with like 2 minutes and 20 seconds left or something. Like this was the one that this effectively ended the game, because I remember yelling at my TV. I was like, of course MVS did that. Yeah, but that's a hell of a play.
Here's another one. So another man coverage play, trips bunch set. Actually, it's quads to the bottom of the screen now because they motion the running back over. Obvious man coverage. You see him work through that disruption at the line of scrimmage. This is why the Bills went out and got the guys like Keon Coleman, those bigger receivers, to work through disruption. Something the Chiefs love to do when they play the Bills is get their hands on the wide receivers. You see him work through that, and then watch right here. He just bends it out to the corner on this little sail route and this flood concept and creates that separation. And this is one of those plays we talked, those deep overs, the ability the speed to go across the field if needed. But what the Bills used to do all the time when they had speed, like guys like Robert Foster, is fake this deep over and run that sail, or to that deep V is what they actually called it in Brian Dable's offense. MVS has that speed and ability to snap these routes off on these flood type concepts or those, corner routes. And you see that speed, and that's the separation they need. But you can see he gets into the open field and just watch that slow transition. Like right now, like he should be able to, hit this corner or at least break it back and beat that one-on-one, but he kind of stalls out, and they're going to see this guy from behind catch him. That change of direction. Once that speed stops, it does take him a little bit to get going. So again, positive play, but there's also some scouting here that you can see on, what he doesn't quite have when you're talking the elite wide receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, definitely some meat left on the bone on this rep. And I think this is also indicative of what he is with his routes and his stems. Like it's more just straight line, 1 or 2 cut type of stuff. Like he's not shaking everybody after the catch or in his stems. And it starts with, this rep starts beating that press like you talked about. And he's up against, I believe that's Josh Blackwell, slot corner for the Bears. So he's 5'11", 180 pounds. So MVS has the size, the length, the frame advantage, runs basically right through him. And then this is where you're able to build on that speed element. He excels at running those deep overs because he has that speed. So the corner has to acknowledge it. He's able to stack the corner, and then you only have a single high safety. So once he stacks that corner, he just runs the space as he bends it back. And this is where, again, that speed, that ability to separate, leaves the corner in the dust, and then the safety isn't able to get over the top in time because of how quickly MVS gets there, and there's just oodles of space. And this is an element, that sail concept, however you get to it from kind of faking the over or getting to it to the more traditional way, we show that all the time for Josh Allen. He loves hitting the sail concept, that specifically that sail route. He's hit it to Knox a whole bunch. Having that element present with MVS is a nice addition.
Right. And again, man coverage. Here's another man coverage rep. This is probably one of my favorites from him. So you got man coverage again, bottom of the screen. He's in the slot right here. And then just, again, work into the post safety. The Bills saw the most man coverage last year. of any offense in the league. So again, having guys that can beat man, especially you're in cover one, like you see here with that single high post safety. Look at this move right here on, I think that's Hilton too.
It
Like
is on
that's
Hilton. Yep.
really good slot corner for them. You see him create that separation, bend it to the corner, and then one hell of adjustment. I'll show it from the end zone angle. Really good adjustment on the back end here on this pass from Mahomes. Look at how Scantling, right there. Oh, that was a nasty route. Watch right here to the left side of the screen, right there. Really decent, break right there to the corner. And then the adjustment, again, down the field, he's able to contort that body, catch it with his hand before the safety gets there over the top. Really nice play, really nice route by Scantling on this play.
Yeah, and against literally one of the best slot corners in football, Mike Hilton, Kenny Moore, Taron Johnson for the Bills, like your top three, like slot. I guess we'll throw McDuffie in there now that he's primarily slot. Just Hilton is one of those dudes who can go. He does not really get turned around like this often, and MVS does it. And it's that threat of that speed again, like, he's going across the field. I have to honor it, sells it enough, and look at all of that space. And again, because they're in cover one with a single high safety, that space is a legitimate piece that Hilton has to honor because, look how much space there is and there's no help over there. And MVS, again, not too much shake. Let me just put my foot in the ground and keep going and then have that speed, that ability to threaten and get past. And then again, size, length, frame showing up at the catch point, making that nice off-frame catch. It's funny just to watch him like make these plays and then he runs like a 4-yard hitch and then drops the ball. Like it's just the wildest stuff.
Here's another rep. Down the field, man coverage versus a safety this time. So the Broncos are like, we have Justin Simmons. We can match him up from depth against MVS in the slot. And just look what he does on this play. It's like a double China 7. So you got 2 in-breaking routes, and then he breaks it to the corner. Mahomes throws him flat. But that speed, that threat of speed, that safety has to stay over the top. And you get Simmons committing to the middle because they've seen these over routes right here. And you even see the eyes used by MVS to sell it. Hey, I'm looking at the quarterback. Ball must be coming on this deep over, but he snaps it off to the corner, and Mahomes hits him for another explosive play down the field. And I think there's another third down play too as well. Yeah, look, third and long right here.
About a 3rd and 11, 3rd and 12, roughly. So another big conversion. I love a good double China 7. It's one of my favorite like low red zone concepts. I know it is for a lot of people. You highlighted the thing that I really wanted to highlight, so I won't stay too much on it. Like I just like how he sells the over with the eyes like that. As soon as he puts his foot in the ground and picks up pace, he sells it with his eyes. And you see Simmons react to it. You see the far side safety react to it as well. It's just a good job selling, especially for a dude who doesn't necessarily operate with a ton of shake in his movement and in his stems and on his breaks. Any little bit of deception that he can add with his eyes or body language in general really helps. And then because of his speed that he has, all he needs you to do is just misstep or hesitate for half a second or a quarter of a second, and he can make you pay. And this was a big conversion in this game for him and the Chiefs.
Right. And Buffalo Buddha asked how many drops did MVS have last year? He had 3 last year, 5 the year before. So yeah, it is. And we're going to show you every single one of those here in a few minutes. But here's another big play in a big moment, another 3-by-1 type set. And he is running again that corner route. But look, he's bodied up on this play. So he's bodied up on this play right here. Watch him, again, work through the disruption and reel that ball in on the back end right there with the ball being contested at the catch point against another really good defense and another really good corner.
Yeah, another rep against Mike Hilton. This time, Hilton does not really give him room to breathe on the move here. He gets into that low hip and drives on him and pushes, but it's nice to see, again, the size and the frame show up. He's got the physicality. He's able to play through the contact from Hilton and then make a really nice contested catch like that. That element that you would like present in his game because of the size and frame, but he doesn't really show it off a ton because of his speed and his ability to separate with it. So again, a nice little flavor and another example of how he potentially can win in another way and then help this offense again against one of the best coverage dudes in the league at slot corner.
And here's one that you guys will all recognize. But again, look at the running back out wide. You have Dotson following him. That's a man coverage indicator. So then they bring the running back in, and now you have the man matchup that Mahomes wants, and he wants MVS, looks right at him versus Taron Johnson on a slot fade. and you have a perfectly thrown ball, and MVS capitalizes. Look at the speed off the line of scrimmage. There's immediate separation. More horizontally, you see him towards the boundary there, but the more room you get horizontally, that allows you to also get down the field. The ball's, thrown perfectly over that outside shoulder. Really good concentration. Can't really get much better coverage from Taron Johnson, but again, the throw, the catch on the back end, a big play down the field, as always, to MVS.
I hate this one, man. Like, he struggled so much in 2023, and even just in this game, and like, of course, he pulls up this catch now in this game, and Mahomes drops it in the friggin' bucket. Like, this one comes on first down. It's a really nice catch. Like, I like how he's able to give Mahomes that space and hold that red line a little bit and not get too far to the sideline. Gives Mahomes room to work with so he can go up and get this. This is great coverage by Taron Johnson. Look at the hands. Like, he's looking this in, and he basically one hands it with that outside hand because his inside hand is hand fighting a little bit with Taron Johnson. So he uses that one hand to initially reel it in and then brings his left hand, that inside hand, across to secure it and make the catch. A ridiculous throw, but a ridiculous catch as well. Like, high degree of difficulty that also is nice setup in terms of, again, the spacing and where he ran his route to be QB friendly. Great catch. Stupid game, but great catch.
Yeah. And the slot fade has really, I mean, if you watched college football last year, if you studied the wide receivers in this draft, like all of Bills Mafia did, you saw slot fades being probably the number one route being run. It's, I mean, when we did the Brian Thomas episode,
slot
fades, like he had like 11 slot fade touchdowns. Like it's going to be a big thing again this year. And here's another one, this time versus, I think this is the Jags here, but again, you're getting that one-on-one coverage. If you're giving him that type of space, he's going to create that separation. But as you can see on the back end too, he's able to adjust to that pass, getting that horizontal leverage on that DB. Mahomes keeps it outside, and you see him turn his body around, and he's able to make that catch along the boundary.
Good body control, again, which we talked about earlier. Nice adjustment. And, again, ball tracking, body control, the hands to bring it in. And I like the speed too. Like, you can see how much that speed plays, like how it threatens that corner. Like, he makes that move and he attacks and he is upfield. There isn't like, okay, you got to wait to see him get up to full speed. And once he does, we'll see if he can get there. But especially too, like, if Mahomes puts this ball like kind of as like a back shoulder throw and leads him to the sideline to make it because of that safety, exactly, coming over that top a little bit. But if that safety hesitated and this was, more of a man coverage piece where he's got him stacked and that safety's not there, you could put this ball over the top and let MVS go and get it because of how his speed already won that rep against the slot corner. So it just gives you another element that defenses have to account for, and the safety having to get over the top. And here Mahomes puts the ball to the outside because the safety's there. That speed just works to his advantage and opens things up in a multitude of ways and allows the quarterback to kind of pick and choose how he should succeed with the throw.
All right. And, we've talked about those big plays and those big moments. We showed you a bunch of them. This one was versus zone, but it's in the Super Bowl, and you're in the red zone right here. You see him to the top of the screen, and watch how the Niners start off with, two safeties high right here, but how that picture changes post snap, and they run cover 3. So this guy buzzes down into the flats. He's a deep third player. Obviously, this safety is shaded to the wide side of the field, so he's not going to be able to get to the post. And so as soon as they spin to that cover 3, the weakness in cover 3 is right down the seam. Look at MVS's eyes. He immediately recognizes that coverage. He says, you know what? It's cover 3. I need to get into the seam. And what they were running generally is they're running just, curl here and then usually a rail route or wheel route up the sideline. But he takes it right up the seam because of that cover 3. That's understanding how the picture changed from pre to post snap. And again, that mental processing is there for the touchdown in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, this is one of the ones I referenced earlier, with just that ability to the post snap processing. This is such a good job, and it's nothing crazy, right? This isn't like, oh, look at the speed or the tremendous physical ability. This is just him on the snap, recognizing that safety is buzzing down. He knows where the space is. He works to the space, and he makes a big play. Like, he only had 3. Let me confirm. Yeah, he only had 3 catches for 20 yards in this Super Bowl against the Niners, but one of them was this one, and it was a hugely important play for the Chiefs as they were kind of struggling in that Super Bowl and easily could have lost it if some bounces didn't go their way. That's just a great, smart, heady veteran play, especially for like a quarterback like Josh, where you want as many guys to kind of lighten the mental load as possible. Like, that's just real pretty. Like, on the same page, recognize it, attack it, boom, easy touchdown that comes from that veteran awareness.
Here's one in the low red zone versus the Texans. This was my guy's bigger than yours. I see you kind of playing this safety over the top, over this guy, capping him one-on-one outside, a little sprint out, and then you see him create separation at the back end of this play with his length on this one. Really tough catch, getting bodied up there in the low red zone. He's able to reel it in for a touchdown here against the Texans.
Yeah, this is a nice one. It's funny too how different his 2022 versus his 2023 was. This is a 2022 rep.
Yep.
And just how consistent he was catching the ball regularly, but these off-frame catches and just really being a reliable part of the offense when they needed him to be throughout that year. Like, it'll be nice if he can get back to this form this year with the Bills instead of being in that 2023 piece. But again, physicality, length, frame, all these pieces showing up in smatterings along with that speed, which is a nice thing to have, again, in like a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 type of guy.
And one thing that's changed, I mean, since the draft of Josh Allen, Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, playing outside of structure, playing outside of script, in that scramble drill, into that second play. And it's something that when you're doing evaluation for the draft or free agency, you better be scouting that for wide receivers, running backs, and tight ends, because it's a huge part of the game now. And MVS does a pretty good job of that, much like Keon Coleman. I think Coleman does a good job of that as well. But you're going to see him bottom of the screen. He's working back to green, and he sees that Mahomes is already just in a scramble drill going out to his right. So what's he do? He goes deep because he's short. He goes deep over the top. Mahomes hits him, and then you see that gear and that speed, and he's able to take it to the house. He's pretty good in the scramble drill mode, and I expect several big plays from him if he makes the team, several big plays from him in these type of situations.
Absolutely. And we talked about it earlier, like playing with guys like Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers, like you have to succeed in this world because those are two QBs that make plays in the scramble drill. They make plays off script. And it's nice how he immediately works to get into the field of vision of Mahomes. He works to find that space. There is no hesitation. He sits, and also what's nice too on the initial route, he sits and then he works back towards the ball, which is nice.
Yep.
And then he sees what's going on and sees where Mahomes is going. And he's like, let me go be friendly to my QB. And he starts out horizontally, but then he sees where Rashee Rice is. So he bends it upfield, finds green. All of that happening in the blink of an eye is a really nice piece. And it's something that Gabe Davis did really well. It's something that Stephon Diggs did really well. So it's nice to know that we have that element present again on this roster with what MVS can do. And I could really see him like excelling in this type of role and having like 3 catches for 75 yards, and 2 of them came on like big scramble drill plays like that.
Yeah, he had 2 big ones in that game alone. This was the one he scored a touchdown on that we just watched against the LA. But I really like this one too against Green Bay. More in the middle of the field, but watch him. You're seeing that bunch set to the bottom of the screen, and he's going to sit right here again, kind of like a scissors concept where this guy's going that way and he's kind of bending out. And normally he would just carry it out wide here to the corner. But what's he do? He sits right here, but watch, there's really nothing there. So he sits right there, and Mahomes, he doesn't want to throw it with Campbell here and this DB. So what does he do? He moves to space. He sees this guy coming across the field. Those guys jump him, and he goes and finds space over the middle of the field. He uncovers, and he's able to get the ball for the first down there.
And another one, if you're looking at the sticks down at the bottom of the screen, 3rd down.
Yep.
Big time moment, makes a good play. Also runs this route past the sticks. So if it is open and that window is available, he's not going to make the catch short of the sticks. He makes it past the sticks to be able to get that first down. But exactly like you said, reading the coverage, reading the leverage, and understanding where he needs to go and what he needs to do to be helpful for his QB. And you see everybody flowing that way. Watson is flowing in the middle around the 40. CEH is flowing out of the backfield. So MVS goes against the grain, gets his eyes on Mahomes, makes himself available, gets into that field of vision, attacks the space. Really nice play. And then even too, a nice catch, like not the best thrown ball. He's got to go down and get it. So there's a lot to like on that, on this play as well. Again, all these, not the sexiest thing, but useful traits, useful pieces to his game that will be nice additives to this offense. And I also like, real quick, this comment from Walter is nice, saying going from Rodgers to Mahomes to Allen as his QBs is a hell of a story to tell his future grandchildren.
Yeah, he's again, he's one of those guys that, yes, the Bills were interested in him coming out of college, guy that went, I think it was the 5th round. and he was a developmental type guy, but man, he's come a long ways. And
Yeah.
as Walter said there, he's had some really good quarterbacks to grow with, and
Yeah.
he's got a pretty good resume, believe it or not. And
Two Super Bowl rings playing with
yeah.
all these QBs. Yeah, he's done pretty well for himself.
So we're gonna kind of highlight some of the critiques that we have on his game now. So one thing that I'd like to see him attack the ball more, but more so coming out of breaks. I like this little route change here, or pace to this route right here. Watch right here, you see him kind of hesitate right there. But then when he breaks on the ball here, there's not much separation, and I want to see him work back to the ball more, and more so knowing where that leverage is. Okay, when he breaks there, he knows that this guy's gonna be driving on that inside shoulder. And I want him to come out of this break and work back to the ball, but kind of drift this way into that open space as he spaces outside to the boundary. And I think that's what Mahomes was expecting, because you're going to see the throw kind of go outside to the outside left shoulder there. And I think Mahomes was expecting him to kind of drift in the space there. So coming out of breaks, knowing where the leverage is and where that, he can exploit where the opening and space is. I'd like to see that a little bit better on top of attacking the ball, coming back for the ball.
Yeah, this is some of the things that, like when they would cut to Mahomes right after this player on the sideline, like he's complaining and kind of, throwing his hands up in the air, because he and MVS and really the receivers as a whole for Kansas City in 2023 were not able to consistently get on the same page.
Right.
And it's funny too, because we talked about, we showed how we worked back to the ball in that Chargers clip, didn't get it, and then, made himself available in the scramble drill. Adding that consistency and being able, to attack that leverage and attack that space. And you can feel it where that corner is. And that's why Mahomes throws him outside. Like Bradbury's sitting, he's driving on that inside shoulder. So Mahomes is thinking, okay, cool. He's going to fade back towards the sideline a little bit, towards the 40 where all that space is. And there's a lot of it. Like there's a good amount of space between that flat defender and then Bradbury, who's on his inside shoulder. And then exactly, you throw him to that outside shoulder, and ideally he can make that catch and get upfield right away. So it's understandable to think what Mahomes was doing, and he and MVS just were not on that same page. And even with MVS, with his length and frame and moving towards that ball, he's still not able to get to it just because there's that disconnect.
Right. And this is another one of those plays here, middle of the field. You're going to see him. Actually, no, this is down the field. Hold on one second. Let me fix this play.
Oh,
I
poor
think
Cater Kohu.
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
Mr. Cater Kohu.
This one's.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. This one's down the field, but another play where he has Kohu on him and all over him. I want to see him, attempt to go up and get the ball. Like you see him kind of play the late hands game, which is great.
Yeah.
But this is one of those plays like, okay, he's all over you, jump up, jump back into him to go for the ball and kind of, draw that. And you see the late hands, he ends up dropping. Again, this one's a pretty big critique. I thought I actually cut that out of the film room altogether. But here's another example of attacking the ball and how I want him to come back to the ball right here. So now we always talk about Kincaid putting himself in advantageous position post catch. Like he sets up the first defender prior to the catch itself. MVS doesn't have that. All right. And so you see here, he should already be putting his body in position to make a move back to the middle of the field. You see him fighting the catch. It's something we're going to talk about here in a minute with the drops. He fights the ball a little bit, and then he just can't do anything post catch. Again, minor critique, but I don't expect many yards after the catch or some of that rack ability that the Bills have been trying to, add to the Bills offense.
Yeah, that's a great comp too, and kind of juxtaposing him with Kincaid, who, if he sits over the ball, he's able to use that drop step and immediately get himself in position to get upfield. Or if this is Kincaid doing this, he's running that track that you kind of just highlighted, where he knows where the leverage of the defenders are. So he's going to come back to the ball so that way he can get upfield and take it
loop it back, right?
Exactly. And take it angularly more to the 50 instead of just catching it there, trying to break an arm tackle, because there's so much space on the inside where both defenders are. And yeah, this is a pretty common occurrence for MVS. And I think to your point, is why the yak stuff isn't really present for him, especially when you pair it with his lack of shiftiness or suddenness from a stop start or agility standpoint. So yeah, if he's making a catch on a 6-yard hitch, maybe he falls forward and gets you 7 yards, but he's not that dude that, oh man, look how we caught it and shook a guy because he felt it or just made that move and turned 6 into 15.
Right. And so we're lucky enough to, highlight or show the lowlights, I should say, of some of the drops. So we're going to go through the 8 drops, but I want to highlight 3 of them. And the first one is this one right here against the Bucks. And it's something I talked about, once he gets in traffic right here, he's got a defender right here. He's got one over the top. And you're going to see him in certain situations when he's in traffic. He has those concentration drops right here. Like he should easily be looking this one in, but he kind of takes it at the very last second, takes his eyes off the ball and watches 22 closing in on him. He ends up dropping the ball. And of course, I think that's Winfield at the top of the route as well, making it more difficult. But this is a play that he should have caught again in traffic. It's something that he needs to do a better job of, especially we're talking at the top, that 0 to 10 yard range, the fringe of the intermediate area in traffic over the middle. Like you got to catch these balls over the middle.
Yeah. And with how much his vertical speed is such a threat, you're going to get these opportunities where guys are going to play off of you a little bit and try and play more over the top. And there's going to be that space underneath and in the intermediate. And it would be nice if he was more consistent in that realm. And yeah, sometimes it's the eyes and concentration pieces. Sometimes it's just awkward hand placement and not being consistent with how he's bringing the ball in. And then here's another one too. Here's another one here against the Raiders.
Yeah, right through his hands, right?
Yeah, right in the face.
And this is another one of those plays where you're getting more of a zone coverage look. So he's coming across the middle and he knows there's a hook to curl defender there. I wouldn't say he necessarily took his eyes off the ball, but he sure as heck didn't look it in. It hits him, right in the chest, just above the numbers. Again, second down play here. If I recall correctly, of his 8 drops over the last 2 years, 4 of them were on third down, 4 of them were on second down. So just to kind of give you a little perspective on that. But these are the type of plays where this is why he wasn't that good against zone coverage, because he had several of his drops in between 2 defenders coming over the middle in the short area. He just tends to lose concentration.
Yeah, and he sets it up nicely. Initially, the coverage works, the rub works. He's got that space, but you would just like him to be able to piece it all together. And I think that's something too, why, like we showed in the more highlight portion of this and breaking down his game, he's got some nice pieces that are welcoming to an offense, which is why he continues to be able to, get contracts in the NFL. But it's just too often he's lacking in one area and not able to put everything together consistently in these reps to consistently win and find true production.
Right. And here's another one, again, between defenders coming out of that curl route right here to the top of the screen. Not the best throw, but again, Mahomes is expecting him to come out of that break and split these defenders, find that soft spot between the 2 defenders here. And, so Mahomes throws him a little more inside, and this was ruled a drop, a little low throw there, but this was considered a drop for MVS.
And on third down, it starts out well. He gets to the sticks, he gets past, he makes himself available. But again, it's just that slight disconnect. And this is where things can really kill you. You get the separation on your guy, you get outside, you turn back inside, but you just got to work back to that space and find enough a little bit or be on that same page. And unfortunately, if the QB is expecting you to do A, you got to do A. And again, this is something that plagued him a bunch in 2023, where and granted, this one's from 2022, but him and Mahomes just not being on the same page when it came to these fine little detail pieces and these fine little detail moments.
Yeah. And hold on, I actually skipped forward by accident here. Go back to the drops.
Yeah, he's got some things to like. It's really nice. And I think that's too what we want to highlight with everything, right? Is we love to show what guys can do, but then also putting it together and being able to function. Because I know there's some questions if he's doing so well, how come the Chiefs didn't want him back? Or how come this? So showing some of the warts and kind of showing you what he's capable of, but then the inconsistency, which is what knocks him down a peg a little bit.
Yeah, here's another one, top of the screen, tight set between 2 defenders in zone coverage, linebacker driving, corners out wide, and you're going to see him lose focus. Ball is hot, obviously underneath. Mahomes is trying to fit it in the window. It's a little high. He doesn't, squeeze the ball properly and ends up going through his hands. Luckily, there's no one behind him for the interception.
Yeah, granted, it comes in hot. It's not a great throw, but if you stop it right when the ball's about to go through his hands, a little more, one more quick little slow-mo. One more. Sorry. He's looking when it goes through his hands, he looks at Jones immediately. So he's looking at the ball now, right, but there. Bang, right there. That's exactly it. Sorry. I know, because also too, there's a quarter-second delay between me and you and the film. That's why he drops it. He's already IDing the linebacker. He's worried about that hit. He's cognizant of it, which is smart. You don't want to get crushed over the middle, but that's why he drops that ball, because he's hearing footsteps or he's seeing that flash of color coming through. And again, for a big body dude who has that speed, who has the opportunity to win underneath, you'd like to see that not be so worrisome. And then, like you highlighted, this is on third down, a third and short. You
Yeah.
get past the sticks, you make yourself available. That should be as easy as pitch and catch can be in the NFL, even though that's an overused term and simplification. That one should have been an easy pitch and catch.
And here's another, this one's a touchdown in the low red zone. You got to catch that. He's running that deep over against man coverage, and they blow the coverage. I mean, this is wide open back line, and you see him, the way he goes to catches it's a basket catch. He doesn't frame it properly, and it's kind of one of those in between, like that hip area is like, okay, do I use a basket catch or do I frame it, like a diamond with my hands? You see him kind of get caught in between. He ends up dropping it there. Again, another one of his drops. This is against LA. He is to the bottom of the screen. Another one, just
it's
a
like
quick
4-yard pitch. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is another one of those, like, maybe not to the degree we were talking earlier. Like, I want him coming back for the ball because you see that corner driving on it really hard. And he doesn't. He just waits. And then again, the way he frames his hands is not, it's a tough catch being a low throw. But this throw would have been framed a lot easier if he had worked back to the ball, caught it with his hands, and got into a position to, again, do something post-catch. But here, it's considered a drop here on the back end.
Yeah, sometimes he just makes things a little too difficult for himself with, whether it was the Cincinnati clip of not going with the diamond and kind of keeping everything in front of you. Instead, you go for the basket catch and you're trying to contort your body and make a sliding catch at the same time, which is a bit difficult. And then even this one too, like just kind of sitting there, and granted the throw is like a little lower, but he could have put himself in better position to make this catch either by coming back to the ball out of the break or even moving towards it a little bit instead of just sitting there. Because also too, even if he makes the catch sitting there, Asante Samuel Jr. is right on him. So you're going to make this catch and get tackled right away. Like, come back to the ball a little bit, give yourself some space to take advantage of the space that you have versus the off coverage. So again, it's just these little detail things that you'd like to see him take advantage of more consistently. Oh yeah, this is such a huge one.
Yeah, and this is one of 6 of his drops, as we talked about earlier, were in that 0 to 10 yard range, 1 in the intermediate area. This is one that was dropped deep, and look where the ball is in his hands. Look where his helmet and eyes are looking. Again, his hand-eye coordination is not the best. This one's obviously a touchdown that he dropped there versus the Eagles. Got to have it in these type of moments. So yes, he has made some really big plays and some big moments, but you're also seeing why he's so polarizing to Chiefs fans, why he was so polarizing to Packers fans, because the consistency isn't there at all 3 levels. And even when it comes to his drops, here's one, he's just running a crossing route and he's wide open right here. And you see him, it's a back hip type throw, but you catch this. You're a professional wide receiver. You catch this and you run in for the touchdown. Instead, he drops it on third down on a perfectly, called up play or dialed up play from Andy Reid. And he's not able to reel that in for the touchdown, essentially a touchdown on the back end.
And those 2 drops are so wild. Like the Philly one, like the way you freeze framed it, like it's in his hands. You think like, oh, that's a catch, and it's not. And then this one, like, granted, this ball is on that back shoulder, back hip a little bit. You still got to catch it, but look at, boom, right there. When the ball touches his hands and touches his body, look where his head is at. He's already looking upfield. And his eyes aren't on the football. And this is probably a touchdown. You've highlighted the 2 defenders who went with Rashee Rice vertically. 20 is too far on his inside, and with MVS's speed and movement on this route, he's already got a step on him. MVS catches this and gets upfield, and it's an easy touchdown for him. And it's just a concentration drop. He probably maybe even sees too, like, I have all this green grass, and he's feeling it. Gets a little bit of ahead of himself, doesn't look the ball in, and that's what you see a lot with him. Like when he does have those drops, the majority of them are your quote unquote concentration drops. And here he is kind of
don't complain to Mahomes like, oh,
bro, don't throw it on my back hip. My back hip, man. Come on.
No, stop that. You can cut that right out. So yeah, like
bro,
I hope we framed it and gave you some perspective on the player, because again, he's very polarizing, and as you can see, some super good highlights and big moments, and then moments like that make fans super frustrated. But again, it's mid-May and you're bringing in a guy that can fit a role in your offense, and a role that has existed in the prior years when we're talking, a vertical stretch type player, some variance to his game. But those moments, those big moments are needed, especially for guys that don't get the sample size, a guy like MVS that, when those moments arise, if you can score 5 or 6 touchdowns in those moments, that's going to help the Bills offense as a wide receiver 4 or 5 or even 6.
Yeah, and again, that's like I think framing it within that realm of like what he's going to be on this depth chart or where he is in the pecking order, what his role is. It is as wide receiver 4 or 5 or 6, and he's got some fun elements and some fun traits and skill set pieces that can be, nice additives to this wide receiver room, but he isn't holistically able to put it together and place himself at the top of the depth chart, which is why he was so frustrating this past year with his time in Kansas City because, you had Rashee Rice developing, but they needed MVS as kind of like an early wide receiver
Did.
1 and then even like wide receiver 2 down the stretch with looking at their roster. Kadarius Toney kind of flamed out. They added Mecole Hardman late, but he's never really been anything other than a gadget or specialty guy. You have Justin Watson. He kind of flirts at times between like a wide receiver 3, maybe a low tier wide receiver 2, but not really.
Right.
And so Kansas City needed him to be a top of the depth chart kind of guy, especially in conjunction with having a strong running game, good offensive line, and then having Travis Kelce. So the expectation wasn't even that much in terms of what was placed on his plate, but they needed him to operate in that role, and he wasn't able to. And I think, Erik, the way we showcased what he does well and what he does poorly at times, especially from a consistency standpoint, is why he's not able to be a top of the depth chart guy, but why it's encouraging to bring a guy in at this point in the offseason to, again, be your wide receiver 4 or 5 or 6, because he does have some things that can be, nice bonuses to a room, plus his Super Bowl experience, plus being a part of these teams that have gotten the job done. So there are some things to like. It's just that upside and that ceiling is limited, even though he does raise the floor and round things out a little bit.
Right. And Pops Mafia adds, wide receiver coach has a lot of work to do to get this wide receiver. Yeah, he does. And he's a very good coach, and he's got a lot of young players on his plate that he's got to coach up and, help Joe Brady and this staff really not just develop the player, but put these players in position to succeed on Sundays. And from the sound of some of the schedule leaks, in some primetime games this year. So that's going to be interesting, man. So the next couple hours, 8:00, they're releasing the schedule, but it looks like,
yeah, even though like everything's been leaked by now at this point, it's such a weird way to like, you would think with them making such a special out of it, things wouldn't get leaked in that way. Like I think
right.
our boy Alex Brasky, like 4 hours ago, basically had like 9 or 10 of the games already tweeted out for the Bills in terms of the week, who they were playing, where it was going to be. So it's a little wonky at times with how much they let things get out.
Right. And it says, let's see, Thad Brown tweeted a little while ago, based on the early first few games. So Buffalo will play 4 of the first 6 games in prime time, according to his sources on social media. Week 2 at Miami, Thursday Night Football. Week 3 versus Jacksonville, Monday Night Football. Week 4 at Baltimore, Sunday Night Football. And then week 6 at the Jets, Monday Night Football. Again, this is according to Thad Brown on X. But these players, the young players and new pieces that the Bills brought in this year, are going to be tested in those big moments that we talked about here in the film room tonight. It's going to be exciting, man. Listen, we're in the lull off season right now, and we're doing an MVS breakdown today, for God's sakes. And and I'm still excited. No disrespect, but I'm still excited about football. And again, it helps that we had some film to break down tonight.
Oh, absolutely. It's always nice when we can have actual film here in the film room, and it's not stuff that we're really stretching to find and make happen. Oh, nice comment there from Aiden.
Yeah.
A lot of Kyer Elam talk last night on Disguised Coverage with the mailbag episode. There's a lot like seeing what happens with Kyer Elam as like CB3 this year and what he can do potentially with some new coaching on that side of the ball. What Terrell Bernard is like, Matt Milano coming back, Dwayne Carter, seeing what the safeties look like. Like there's some fun questions that can be answered on defense or potential like worrisome answers. And then the offensive side, like we talked about in this episode in several pieces, man, like even just seeing what happens on the offensive line, like what does that new combination look like? Does, VPG threaten a little bit at center and maybe they want to move McGovern back? What does Kincaid look like in year 2? How is Keon Coleman coming along from a refinement standpoint? How does this wide receiver room shake out? Like it's scary a little bit because if things don't hit or don't work out the Bills in the Bills' favor. And Aiden says, not even joking, would mittens help him. They tried, what was his rookie year and last year? They put boxing gloves or UFC gloves on him to prevent him from grabbing. Like, that's how severe it's been in camp.
And the funny thing is, like, he's seriously asking that. But see, I think that the average fan would say, hey, yeah, that is the solution. So he's not grabby, but he's grabby because of his feet, not his hands, guys.
Yeah, his feet get him in trouble, and he panics, and then he lunges and leans, and he grabs. Yep.
So, and that was the issue that he's dealt with, being mentored under John Butler, the former, coach for the Bills, is, it's trying to get his feet and his footwork properly in place so that he isn't grabbing and getting out of phase and trying to recover. It's more so about his feet than his hands if you go back and watch his film. And that was going to be an issue from day one because of the type of man coverage they played at Florida and some of the scooch technique, some of the catch technique that they did there versus when the Bills were running man coverage under Butler. But different secondary coach now. Maybe there's some new techniques being taught. There will be. We already did a whole episode on. There will be. And so that'll be interesting to say. So, Aiden, I understand what you're saying there, but I'd say go look at his feet more so than his hands when you're talking about the issues that Elam has dealt with.
And that's also, I think it's just a good general learning piece for cornerback play in general. Like, you want to look at that feet. The footwork is what determines like what those guys do. Like, their eyes and their hands and route recognition and all that kind of stuff is important, but it's the feet that gets them anywhere and everywhere they go. Like, all jokes aside, like that positioning is what determines what they do. And yeah, that just Elam's feet it's not clean, his footwork, and he gets himself in some trouble, and he leans and he extends and he grabs, and it gets him into trouble. But we'll see what he does. We'll see what this offense does. Yeah, it's going to be a fun training camp. It's going to be a fun preseason, and it's going to be a fun start to the season with a trial by fire for this team that's not rebuilding, but has undergone a significant revamp. And we're going to find out right out of the gate, those first 4, 5, 6 weeks, who this 2024 team is. Because again, they're out of the frying pan into the fire like right away, and it's going to be fun. Or they're going to be like 1-5, and everyone's going to grab their torches and pitchforks, and it's going to be crazy. But regardless, throughout training camp, throughout the rest of this offseason, throughout OTAs, training camp, preseason, and then of course in season, we will have you covered with anything and everything you need to see visually here in the Cover One Film Room, breaking it all down for you. Erik, as we start to say goodbye to the people for this episode, any parting words or last thoughts?
Yeah, as you just talked about, it is the lull of the offseason, but we want you guys to leave us a comment on what you want us to cover, whether it's schemes or concepts that the Bills ran last year under Joe Brady or on defense, certain situational stuff you want us to analyze. Now is the time for us to go back into the lab, look at last year and see what the Bills did and maybe what they can build on. Anything that comes to mind, leave us a comment in the comment section on YouTube. Let us know what you want us to cover over the next few weeks, before the Bills eventually get back to camp and all that. The summer's here. So we're going to have some time to do some deep dives on top of some of the other ancillary work we're going to do here at Cover One. But let us know what you want us to cover. You guys drive the show each and every week here in the film room. And so this is no different this time of the year. We'd like to hear from you guys and kind of guide us through this offseason.
Absolutely. And it could be something large scale, Erik, like you mentioned, like, hey, break down their failures or wins on third downs or what happened on early downs. Or it could be something like player, like, hey, I'd love to see. I'd love to see what you guys really loved about Terrell Bernard last year, or
Dalton
what do you think of, or Dalton Kincaid, or what do you think about Greg Rousseau from purely a pass rush standpoint? Like, we'd love to see that. So anything and everything you folks want, this is the time of the year where we can go and kind of just do whatever you guys want, whatever direction you point us in, we can go and attack that. And we appreciate you folks, as always. For those of you who joined us live here in this episode, thank you very much for tuning in live, especially with an updated time that we finagled at the last minute, going live here at 5 instead of 7 p.m. We appreciate all the engagement, the back and forth. Yeah, absolutely. All the back and forth with each other, the questions from myself and Erik, all the acknowledgement, and just the bodies being in here. Thank you very much. Before you leave, if you are watching this live, please, and thank you, drop a like on this video. It goes a sincerely long way towards helping us and the entire team and brand at Cover One to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. So please drop a like on this video before you leave. If you are watching live, if you are watching post live here on YouTube, that's cool as well. Please drop a like. Either way, turn on notifications for the Cover One Film Room here on the Cover One channel on YouTube. If you're listening on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, that's cool as well. Please rate and review and subscribe. If you are listening and an audio platform person, tell your family and friends and loved ones about how awesome this show is and the brand in general. That's how a lot of this got started, organically, grassroots, word of mouth, all that kind of stuff. Whatever form or fashion your support comes in, we greatly appreciate it and are tremendously thankful for it. Thank you very much to Clark and to Clifford for your super chats and your donations earlier, just for being here in general. But again, putting some money up as well. That stuff is tremendously helpful and allows us to use, the platforms that we use to break down all these, to show all these advanced metrics and analytics, and then use film with the telestration and all those pieces. So we're unable to do that without the multitude of forms your support comes in, and we're greatly appreciative of all of it. But that'll do it for us here in this episode of the Cover One Film Room. Enjoy the rest of, if you're in Buffalo or in the Western New York area, enjoy the rest of your beautiful Wednesday evening. It's sunny out. It's nice. Maybe stay inside and take a nap. Maybe go outside and get some exercise, get some ice cream, whatever. Do whatever you folks want to do. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday and get ready for Greg and Aaron breaking down the schedule with all the news and everything that comes with that, live here at 9:30 tonight for Greg and Aaron. Not 9. They're going live at 9:30 tonight. So adjust your calendars and watches and everything accordingly. We hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. We will see you next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern, for another episode of the Cover One Film Room. Hit us with those comments here on this episode on YouTube. Again, for whatever you folks want to see, or if you are insider, members, hit us in the Slack channel, or if you have us on Twitter, tweet at Cover One, tweet at pro__ant, throw whatever you got our way, hit us in the DMs, tweet at us, whatever. We have multiple forms that of communication we operate by, so throw whatever you got our way. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Godspeed, and as always, go Bills.